You're listening to the Digital Child Podcast, brought to you by the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child.
As digital technology use becomes commonplace in the daily lives of young children, education on successful digital citizenship is critical in the early years of their education. While topics like privacy and security, cyberbullying, media literacy, and online relationships may seem like heavy subjects for children at 3 or 4 years of age and in the primary years, research indicates that the earlier these concepts are taught to children, the better prepared they will be to live in a digital world. I'm Professor Michael Dezuanni, a Chief Investigator at the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child and host of this Digital Child podcast episode. In this episode, we'll be talking about a project funded by the E-Safety Commissioner and led by investigators in the centre that's looking into how digital citizenship can be introduced to young children and how we can help schools and educators empower their students to use technology responsibly and safely. The project is an Australian first and will be trialling a digital citizenship curriculum by Common Sense Education, a not-for-profit research and advocacy group who work to make the digital world better for children. The curriculum will be trialled in 15 schools around Australia, and we're partnering with Evolve Education to roll out the trial and work with schools and educators. It's my pleasure to introduce Evolve Education co-founders Steve Villani and Rebecca Martin to chat with us about the rollout, together with Christy Corser, a research assistant in the centre who will be sharing details about the research and data underpinning the project. Beck and Steve, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Evolve Education, first of all, and how it came about? Why did you move into the digital citizenship space in the first place?
Yeah, of course. I'll get started. So originally, Evolve Education was born on the back of working with digital technologies leaders within schools and managing their programs. And Beck and I come from an education background ourselves, spending over a decade in primary schools as digital technology leaders ourselves. And so the original concept was to work with schools around Office 365 integration and Google Apps integration, but it sort of naturally took us down the path of online safety, because one of the first questions we were asking schools was, well, what online safety education have you got in place to support the introduction of these new technologies? And often that was met with blank faces and a real sort of lack of understanding of how they could really support the emerging technologies that they wanted to put in place in the school. And so we use simple analogies like, we don't hand over the keys to the cars without learning the road rules and how to keep, ourselves and others safe.
I think too, we found that for most schools, online safety was really just a patchwork of approaches. And in a lot of cases, it was sort of one and done, where the online safety box has been sort of ticked to appease parents or child safe standards. But at the coalface, there didn't really seem to be a lot of meaningful, consistent or constant education happening in the space. So trusted e-safety providers like ourselves work really hard to sort of fill this void. And look, getting somebody in to speak at the school is a wonderful place to start. But it's just not enough over the course of a year for the broad range of issues that we know young people are facing online. And to use another analogy, it's kind of like training for a marathon by going for a run once. So I think, being former teachers ourselves and having active roles in the digital technology space, we really understood the pressure that was on schools, a lot of pressure from parents as well, and that for something to really work, it had to be sustainable, it needed to be cost effective, and it had to be teacher friendly. So a resource that came in the form of what we call plug and play, where everything's ready to go for a teacher.
Oh, thanks, Beck. That's really interesting. And so I guess I'm interested in hearing just a little bit more about the need for digital citizenship education in the first place. And so, Steve, can you drill down a little bit further on that? Like, what do you hear when you go around to schools? What are schools telling you about the need for digital citizenship education?
Well, to be brutally honest, schools are really crying out for it. It's a huge need. And to sort of characterise it, it's a little bit like the elephant in the room for a lot of schools that we work with. in terms of they're just not really sure how to start, but it is placing significant stress on school leadership, teachers themselves, and the wider school community. And so critically, and in a significant change in this space, the new version of the Australian Curriculum 9.0 is actually going to be formally recognising the need for this type of education through a couple of ways. Primarily, it's going to be in a learning area under digital technologies as privacy and security. And in addition to that, there'll be a digital literacy general capability, which includes 3 sub-elements. And they are managing online safety, managing digital privacy and identity, and managing digital wellbeing. So those 2 things really signify a significant change, and it's a long time coming, to be honest. And naturally, it'll come down in dribs and drabs across the country, but that will be adopted, you would assume, by most states and territories in the near future. So as such, this does really pose a genuine challenge for a lot of Australian schools, which will be, well, how do we address the new curriculum? How do we teach it effectively? And how do we make sure that we're doing that in a really strategic way, being, scoped and sequenced? And this is where really our current project that we're undertaking is really positioning our schools in this project, and hopefully more schools in the future, for success, because the digital citizenship curriculum addresses all of the new curriculum areas being introduced in 9.0 and the general capabilities, and it goes further than that in terms of what it does as well.
So maybe this is a good point now to turn to the common sense media curriculum itself. So the Common Sense Media curriculum has been developed by Common Sense Media in the United States. And so, I guess in some respects it's interesting that we're trialling a US-based curriculum here in this country. So I guess, Beck, it'd be good to hear just a little bit more about why that particular curriculum was attractive to you.
I first encountered it when I was teaching digital technologies, and the thing I loved about it was that it is plug and play. So what does that mean? It means that everything is there ready for you to go. You've got videos, you've got slides, worksheets are provided. There's a script, which is particularly important. Maybe you're a teacher that's not comfortable with or familiar with social media and gaming, and you're scared of saying the wrong thing, which is something that we sometimes hear teachers say. So that script can be really comforting for teachers. It's scoped and sequenced, so there's lessons for each year, every step of the way. And so as long as each teacher sort of stays in their lane, you can run it year after year without fear of having double ups. The 6 topics that are featured go beyond just online safety, and they really do cover the broad range of sort of skill sets and mindsets children need to make the most of the digital world. And the final part that sort of come as a surprise to some of the project schools is that it's not onerous. So for prep or foundation to year 1, there's 3 25-minute lessons. And for kids in years 2 to 6, there's 6 45-minute lessons. And of course, you can expand on those with great discussion, and there's additional resources, but it's not a hard program to implement, especially over the course of an entire school year.
So, Beck, can you give us just a little bit more of a sense of the content of the curriculum? So if you're talking about those 3 lessons for the younger years and the 6 lessons for the older grades, what kinds of topics or ideas are covered in those lessons?
So starting with the younger year levels, they're really focusing on things like privacy and security, and media balance and wellbeing. And look, in Victoria, for example, there's a huge need for that post-COVID. We're having a lot of trouble with kids of all ages getting off their devices and finding balance. And then the reason why the lessons increase as it goes to the upper end of the school is because they cover more topics. So things like news and media literacy, cyberbullying, hate speech, and digital drama are covered as well a bit more extensively. Something else that comes up in terms of the content, I think there's a misconception or fear when you're talking to teachers about teaching online safety that they're going to have to talk to their students about sexting or grooming or pornography exposure. And what I would say to teachers that are looking at this curriculum is it's very age appropriate. The terminology is very carefully thought out, and you can really feel comfortable as a teacher that you're not going to broach things that are going to put you in hot water with parents, for example.
Steve, maybe you can tell us just a bit more about how you engage with each school in the project. So what does it look like? What happens when you turn up at a school? How do you prepare them to implement the curriculum? How do you give them ongoing support and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of our strengths, being former teachers ourselves. We really understand a PL session with teachers after a long day of teaching can be monotonous at times. And so first and foremost, energy in the form of lollies, absolutely vital to any information you're going to be presenting to school staff. And so in addition to that, we really take pride in the interactivity and the collaboration. That's sort of a big part of the way we deliver our onboarding professional learning session. And so this project is really a collaborative school approach where a year 6 teacher can see how a year 1 teacher is going and vice versa. We're also providing a midpoint webinar, which more or less operates as a springboard into our community of practice, where we're engaging our American partners, being Common Sense Education, and also extending that to the UK side of Common Sense Education as well, where they're kind of sharing the story of where it's come from, which is really important when you're sort of centering this work. It's important to provide that narrative around, it's 12 years old. In the 12 years that this digital citizenship curriculum has been around, it's had 10 iterations, and that's where the community of practice and that support has really been a big positive through the sort of midpoint that we check in with all of our schools. We've had really positive feedback to date around how we've structured it. And so we're really proud of the way in which we're supporting schools, because it does seem to be sort of enabling this project to really be successful without, overcomplicating things.
One of the things I really love about this project is that it's happening in 15 schools across the country. It's being implemented from the far north in the Northern Territory in some quite remote schools, right through down into Queensland, into New South Wales and Victoria, and then down into Tasmania. And so you've got a really wide range of schools of different kinds from different sectors and so on, which is really exciting. So I guess the next question, the obvious question, is to just ask how the schools are responding so far. And maybe Steve and Beck, you can both contribute here a little bit.
I think, to be honest, Steve and we knew that this curriculum was a winner, but we've primarily worked in Victorian schools. So when the project started, we just didn't know how it would be received in other parts of the country. And I think we've both been blown away at the feedback so far, from Tasmania to the Northern Territory. We're hearing from teachers that the lessons are really hitting the mark with students. And that looks like kids requesting to hear the songs multiple times or wanting to rewatch the videos. They're excited when they come in and see on the board that they're doing a digital citizenship lesson, and they're going home and they're excited to share their learning with families. And I think the other thing that's really coming through in terms of response is that teachers are feeling not only confident, but supported and excited about helping students navigate a space that primarily has really been kept in the shadows. And so the kids' lessons are going way over because the kids are just so excited to be sharing their learning, and they want to talk to their teachers, and teachers are happy to let it go because it's, such rich conversation. And I think another big thing that Steve and I deal with a lot in our work has been the amount of time that teachers are losing at the moment reacting to negative online safety incidents. So anything that's preventative and proactive and positive that's going to reduce that reactive load is great. And teachers are saying that they're spending less time having to untangle that digital drama that often happens at home but blows up inside the school gates.
Steve, how about you? How do you think schools are responding so far?
Yeah, just the positiveness in which sort of teachers have approached extra work, which is what it is. Being a research project, it's not in, the standard curriculum. So we're asking teachers to step outside of that. And we were concerned about timing. For instance, our first group that started in term 4 coincides with report writing. If you've ever been involved with a teacher, it's a bit of a no-go zone for 6 weeks in terms of seeing potentially your partner or your mother or your father or auntie and uncle. So we realise that the load and burden has been significant on schools, but at the same time, they've really welcomed it as a really meaningful part of what they're trying to achieve, because I think teachers are realising more and more, and schools in general, that student wellbeing is a huge part about being ready to learn. And that's another side of this curriculum that is we're really trying to champion, is the fact that we can really address some significant wellbeing issues. And welcome the students to school with smiles on their faces, knowing that they've got an opportunity to talk about, issues that are happening online potentially that previously there was no sort of microphone for. And so that's where this curriculum has, been so beneficial to the schools that are a part of it. And it's, as Beck sort of said, it's really sold itself.
Can I add something else to that, Michael? Just very quickly, Steve reminded me, something else that's happened as a result of the project that's linked to timing and curriculum is schools alleviating the concerns of other schools. So we had one school that were a bit slow, a bit reluctant to get started, and because of that report writing season. And another school reassured them that it's so nice to teach these lessons when you've been madly assessing, and it's been really that when you're assessing like that for reports, you don't often get time to sort of touch base and reconnect with your students, and these lessons provide a really lovely space for connecting with your students. So it was almost like a refreshing thing for teachers to do rather than a burden. So that was nice that they were able to share that with another school.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the sign of a good project if schools are recommending it to each other. So, Christy, I wanted to now turn to the research side of this project. So far we've focused on kind of implementation and how schools are taking up the project, but this is a research project as well, and we're collecting data in each of the schools that we're involved with. So I just wondered if you could give us a bit of an overview of what kind of data we are collecting as we visit the schools.
Sure, thanks, Michael. I'm the lucky one that gets to visit each school and chat with the teachers and students about the digital citizenship curriculum that they've been teaching and learning. So I love nothing more than chatting with students and teachers. And second to that, I love talking about the research. So this is a great opportunity to share some early findings that we're getting from this project. So I'm talking with teachers that have engaged with Evolve Education with their professional learning and who are implementing the Common Sense Education Digital Citizenship curriculum across foundation or the prep year all the way to grade 6. And I'm asking them about their insights into the content of that curriculum, as well as their pedagogy associated with the curriculum that they're implementing. For instance, I'm asking teachers about the appropriateness of the lessons, as well as how suitable they are for their age group, and if there's any content that they believe to be missing from the curriculum that they're teaching, and how their students are engaging with the lessons. I'm also interested if the teachers are engaging with the parent content that is provided with the Common Sense Education curriculum, and if and how this was received from by the parents. We're also interested in asking about if there's any barriers to implementing the content. We know teachers are time poor, and Beck and Steve have spoken about this, and the idea of the crowded curriculum is quite topical here in Australia. So for teachers to be asked to implement this, there needs to be strong links to the Australian curriculum and for this program, and the content needs to be seen as critical rather than something extra to fit in on their already busy day, their weekly plans, their term and their yearly plans. We're also asking teachers about any adaptations that they believe are required for the Australian context. As we've spoken about, this is a curriculum developed in the US and then adapted in the UK. So we're really interested in understanding how teachers are seeing the content here in Australia for students here in Australia. And we're also asking teachers to complete an online survey, and we're asking questions such as, prior to this project, how familiar are they with the term digital citizen? And based on their observations, to what extent do they believe their students are learning new knowledge and skills? And we're also interested, like Beck was saying before, how have these lessons hit the mark for their students in terms of being relevant to their age group, and how were the timing of the lessons? Along with the feedback from the teachers, it's also critical to hear what students have to say as well. So hearing student voices about this program is particularly important. We're chatting with students in small focus groups and hearing their thoughts about the content that they've learned in regarding their digital citizenship skills. We're asking students whether the topics were relevant to them and if there were any topics that are missing that perhaps they would like to learn more about. We're also chatting to students to see how they're engaging with their parents at home about the digital citizenship lessons that they're learning at school. We're also asking teachers to give the students a paper-based quiz that then we collect so we can understand their level of knowledge being taught about that particular lesson.
So the data collection is fairly comprehensive in that sense of collecting some quantitative data from the surveys and from those quiz responses, and then those more qualitative interviews and so on. And so we're getting some really terrific insights, I think. What are you seeing so far? What kinds of things are starting to emerge as findings, would you say?
Yeah, sure. In terms of broad trends that we're seeing so far in the early stages of data collection, we're hearing that teachers are saying they feel confident in teaching the content based on accessing their common sense education resources. Teachers are really enjoying the lessons. They like that they're very detailed and that they have the option of the script as well as links to videos and worksheets. They may not use all the provided content, but they like to be able to select what they need and then can use in the given time that they have, as well as for their context. Teachers are happy with the topics that are being covered across the different year levels. Some teachers have asked for more information on social media and resources that are available to the local Australian laws. For example, allowing children to understand what the legal age in Australia is for them to have social media accounts that are relevant to the Australian context. Teachers are saying that their students are responding well to the curriculum, and it's evident through observations and discussions. Like Beck was saying, rich discussions are coming out of this pedagogy. And sometimes because the length of the lesson is quite long and teachers are really wanting to keep engaging in the discussion, they sometimes can't get through the whole content because they choose to keep that discussion going. And teachers are keen to teach the content again if they're given the chance. And what's important, teachers have said, is that continued support from their leadership team who see value in the content and give those teachers time to not only teach the content but engage in professional learning so they can keep up their confidence in teaching the content. Broad trends for students that we're seeing during the focus groups. Students love sharing their knowledge that they've learnt through the program. They're talking about understanding why they need strong passwords or why it's important to have media balance and knowing about clickbait. So they're using all the terms that is coming through on those lessons. The students, particularly the younger students, like Beck was saying, they love the video content. They love the characters, particularly the sloth that comes through on the video. They enjoy the worksheets and they love singing along with the lyrics and seeing that video up on the screen. There hasn't been a great deal of students going home discussing the content with their parents. Some students who have discussed the content in the past talked about rules that they have in place to protect them at home, and they like that their parents can see their online presence so they feel safe and protected. Students also are feeling that they are teaching their parents things because they recognise that their parents didn't grow up in a digital world like they are. So they're seeing that they're learning from them and with them. Students are really enjoying the topics. They feel like they are relevant to them. They want to engage in learning that helps them feel safe online. They hear about things that are happening and they want to be digital citizens. They are aware of cyberbullying and they want to know how to deal with online issues so they can benefit from being online and feeling safe. They don't want to be scammed or hacked. However, students are expressing that they want to learn why people are doing this and how they are doing it.
Well, that's really wonderful. Thanks, Christy. That's providing some great insights there into what both the teachers and students are feeling about the project. So I guess I'd want to now look just a little bit forward, if that's okay, beyond this project. And Beck, I wondered what going forward, what would your vision be for digital citizenship education in Australia? How should it be offered in Australian schools in the future?
Thanks too, Christy, for your comments. It's so lovely to hear all of that feedback, and it's so lovely I can hear the kids just talking to you through the way that you're sharing that. So thank you so much. It's a good question, Michael. I think the dream for us would be to build on the momentum of this project and to continue to bring digital citizenship to as many schools as possible across the country. And that might look like professional learning sequences for staff within schools or networks of schools, or through educating school leaders through the use of learning hubs or professional learning communities to then go back and take back to their school and share with staff. So there's certainly a few different ways in which it could be done, but for us, the dream is getting this out to as many schools as possible.
And I think to build on that, Michael, it's the simplicity of the project as well at a school level in terms of what the ask represents. It's a really quite a simple project or simple scope and sequence to find a home for, even if, version 9.0 of the Australian curriculum might not come down to schools for a couple of years. As we know, that's how it works across the country. There's no need to sort of panic for schools if this is something that is prioritised as a top resource that's got significant research behind it that we know is working. Then the scalability of this project is really not a massive ask because of all of the evidence that we'll be able to present from the project itself. So, we've got high hopes for this resource in Australia. And, the feedback that we've had from our close relationship that we developed with Northern Territory Department for Education and Training has been, sort of validating that exact sort of high hopes, I suppose, in a sense that already looking at, what can be next and how they can sort of grow the level of impact within their territory specifically, because of the need that exists within the communities of Northern Territory, for example. So, the scalability is something that, having half an eye on the future is that we really believe in, and being able to extend this from 15 schools to, who knows how far it could go, Michael. Sky's the limit.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Steve. And look, I think, being involved with this project myself, one of the things that has been wonderful has been the relationships that have been developed throughout the project. It's been absolutely fantastic from a researcher's perspective to be working with you, Evolve Education, which you're a wonderful team to work with, and also the Common Sense Education team back in the United States have been incredibly supportive and very generous with their time and very terrific with helping us to build new opportunities for Australian teachers as well. So it's been really terrific. So look, thanks so much for joining us today, Steve, Rebecca and Christy. That's really a wrap for today's episode. And so if you enjoyed this episode, you can find more on your favourite streaming service or at the website digitalchild.org.au.